Moderator, Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan, Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, the Honorable Stuart Young, Minister in the Office of the Attorney General, Dr. the Honorable Nyan Gadsby Dolly, Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of Works and Transport, the Honorable Terence Dialsing, Minister of Health, Mr. Adrian Leons, the Member of Parliament for Laventille East Morva, Ms. Destra Bascom, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, and Chairman of the Transition Technical Team, and other members of the technical team who are present with us today, members of the Council of the San Juan Laventille Regional Corporation, CEO of the San Juan Laventille Regional Corporation, Mr. Kenwin Pantin, and members of staff of the Regional Corporation, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor for me, on behalf of the Council and Burgesses of the Municipality of San Juan Laventille, to welcome you, honorable ministers, and each and every one of you attending this 5th session in a series of public consultation on local government reform in Trinidad. San Juan Laventille is one of the more densely populated municipalities. In fact, we are the 3rd largest in terms of population. The 2011 census puts us at a population of approximately 168,000 persons, just behind Tunapuna Piarco and Couva Tabaki Talparo municipalities. Our region, ladies and gentlemen, comprises of parts of 8 constituencies. And they are St. Joseph, Bartarius, San Juan, the St. Anne's East, Laventille East, Morva, Laventille West, Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, Arima, and Chaguanas West. Minister Khan, I asked the question, what does local government reform mean for the burgesses of San Juan Laventille? What benefits should we expect to be derived from this initiative? I have had the opportunity to experience both sides of the spectrum, where as a burgess in this region, I experienced distress and dissatisfaction from not being able to obtain timely and efficient goods and services from the regional authority. And as a practitioner, I experienced equal pain and trauma when the body I have the honor to lead have grave difficulty because of inadequate funding, low productivity, and a myriad of other reasons why we are unable to effectively deliver goods and services to our burgesses. And this is their right. Honorable Minister, once the reform agenda could adequately address these concerns and those of the persons present here today, I assure you that we eagerly anticipate your discourse this afternoon. And more importantly, the implementation of this long-awaited initiative. So, Minister, I thank you and your ministry for gracing us with your presence, and we look forward to more visits to the region of San Juan Laventille and interaction with you. I thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know, and I hope it's very little of you, if any, I am Franklin Khan, Minister of Rural Development and Local Government. I want to warmly welcome you to these consultations on local government reform in Trinidad, and in particularly welcome you to San Juan North Secondary School. My thanks goes out to the chairman of the San Juan Regional Corporation, Alderman Anthony Roberts, for hosting this consultation here this evening. And I want to thank you all for coming out. Let me especially recognize my parliamentary colleagues and in some cases my cabinet colleagues, the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of Works and Transport, the Honorable Terence Yal Singh, Minister of Health, my consultation colleague, the Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General, MP Siot Young, Mrs. Nayan Gatsby-Dolly, the Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, and also the resident member of Parliament for St. Anne's, so of which we are in the smack in the middle of. My colleague, Adrian Leons, the Member of Parliament for Laventille East Mover, and welcome to each and every one of you. We want to just start with a video clip, which I invite you to pay close attention to.
Home sweet home. You grew up here, and with hard work, prayers, and dreams, you made this into the place where you raise your family. But 4 years ago, the river changed course, right after they cleared the land for that compound on the hill. We and the neighbors reported it to our councillor. Not under local jurisdiction. Waterways were not under the control of the corporation. Ministry of Works. No biggie. We went to the regional office. That began the trail. A trail of paper and taxi fares. Door after door. Letter after letter. A trail as long as the river itself. Left wondering which was the real destructive force. This or the long and winding river of red-taped bureaucracy. It was now simply a question of which would get to us first.
Ladies and gentlemen, the video you just saw illustrates a system and the dynamics of which are not familiar to most of us. Whether it is a river, a crack in a drain, an empty lot next door, a blown street light, school repairs, a local heritage site, waste management, the list goes on and on. Under the current system, when a community needs to get something done, it has to take place in one of the many clogged and narrow arteries that run through the central heart of centralized government. These consultation members of San Juan Laventille are unique in the sense that it is the only occasion I can recall that a public consultation in Trinidad and Tobago will be held solely in Trinidad. And the reason is quite simple. Tobago's local government machinery and service delivery system have progressed well beyond that of Trinidad. And this is directly due to the reforms in their local government status and the social contract that now exists between the Tobago House of Assembly and the people of Tobago. Like many communities across Trinidad, Tobago used to have to come to central government for just about everything in the old days of the Tobago County Council. With legislation passed in 1996, the THA was given legal and local authority and autonomy to change that. Because of the THA Act number 70 of 1996, Tobago now has the authority and the autonomy to inform, manage, and dictate and influence virtually every aspect of their own affairs and development. Let us be honest, all of us have gone to Tobago. Tobago is cleaner, the public buildings are better kept, the verges of the road are better kept, the service delivery, by and large, is superior to that of Trinidad. And that has to do, ladies and gentlemen, with the evolution of authority. For example, in Tobago, there's something called TEMA, the Tobago Emergency Management Authority. Fastest response to any emergency you could ever get. Tobago has a medical alert device system that for the last 3 years they have given 520 elderly people this little button to press in case something happens to you, fall, or older people have this tendency to osteoporosis, to break a bone or what have you. You just press a button and an ambulance comes for you. Social service delivery for a range of activities are much better handled in Tobago than in Trinidad. These are just a few examples that illustrate the difference in our bureaucracy. Tobagonians, ladies and gentlemen, have the power to treat with their own community, their own unique culture, their own unique way of life. Why shouldn't we? Isn't there some place called Lavantil that is unique? Isn't a place called Santa Cruz that is unique? And certain communities are so unique that while they are not a separate island like Tobago that will demand certain greater levels of autonomy, the uniqueness of our communities justifies, in essence, that sort of devolution of power that this local government reform process envisages. Now, there's a transformation agenda that this administration is pursuing vigorously. For those of you who follow the election campaign closely, the Prime Minister, then leader of the opposition, virtually every night spoke about two things: local government reform and the creation of a Ministry of Rural Development. Two major transformational issues. So I guess I am the Minister of Transformation, because both portfolios have been handed to me. And I want to make the point that underdevelopment, and I want you all to listen to this carefully, underdevelopment in any society is characterized by the lack of transformational things happening. I'll give you an example. An administration gets into power, and they plod along, and by the time you blink your eye, 5 years has expired. And then there's a perception whether you did good or bad, and you may lose office, or you may be voted in for another 5 years. And you just plod along, and a decade would have passed. And all of a sudden, 2.5 decades would pass, quarter century would have passed. And when you reassess your position as a society, you'll realize nothing transformational has taken place. And ladies and gentlemen, that is underdevelopment. So it is in that context, this administration is pushing for the transformation of Trinidadian society, and in particular, the transformation of the governance structure. And there is no greater place to implement that than to implement it in local government reform. Rural development, I say more on rural development when I'm in a rural community, like Siparia or Sandy Grande. But San Juan Lavantil is largely urban, or quasi-urban. Although in the extremities of the corporation, in Maracas, Las Cuevas, La Fillette, and some of these places, it is rural, so we'll have a rural policy to cover for these areas. Because by and large, and I don't want to sound too critical of the urban areas, but the developmental agenda over the years, since 1962 to now, has been too largely skewed to urban-centric development. And there's now an infrastructure and facilities deficit in rural areas, which this ministry plans to, as I say, to bring the pendulum back to the middle and don't have it swinging on one end. The issue of rural development, as I said, is non-political, and I have gone to tongue in other areas to speak about that, but I wouldn't speak about that here in Sawa this afternoon. But ladies and gentlemen, speaking about transformation, since 1962, successive administration has researched, tracked, discussed, consulted with the public on the benefits of a decentralization of government. And really and truly, it has all been talk. The only real significant thing that happened in terms of local government reform was when the Municipal Corporation Act number 21 of 1990 was proclaimed. And basically, while that was a major change, where we moved from the county council system, St. George East, St. George West, St. Andrew, St. David, Caroni, St. Patrick, Victoria, to the Municipal Corporation Act, where the country was divided into 14 municipalities. That was largely boundary changes. But the functionalities of the regional corporation bore a great resemblance to the county council system because their schedule of responsibilities never changed. So county council was in charge of cemeteries, minor roads, minor water courses, playgrounds, local health to some extent, and garbage collection. Here we are, 25 years after, you have the same schedule. Garbage collection, recreation grounds, cemeteries, minor roads, some aspect of public health, and what have you. So nothing significant has happened. Because, ladies and gentlemen, essentially, and it has happened with both parties, don't get me wrong, successive administrations have kicked the can down the road. Now the ball is in our court, and I want to make a bold statement today that under our Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, we are not going to kick the can along the road any longer. Local government reform is going to happen in this term of office of this PNM administration. The pitfalls of centralized governance has been uncovered, discussed, debated, what have you, and everybody has agreed that local government reform is the way to go. There's a wealth of information and reports in the Ministry of Local Government. Ladies and gentlemen, when I became Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, a high pile of reports. But there was never the political will to implement the reform. There was the Hazel Manning Initiative. There is no Minister of Local Government in history that has done more work than this woman on local government reform. But it didn't happen. Then there was the Suraj Rambachan Initiative in 2013, where he had a white paper in Parliament on local government reform, and yet it never happened. And I'll go brave now and tell you why it never happened. Because it is in the human psyche never to devolve power. The only person I know who devolved power is a man called Mikhail Gorbachev in the Soviet Union, and a program called Perestroika, where he disbanded the Soviet Union, this world superpower, into the individual republics. And it is because of that psychology of trying to hold on to centralized authority that the Prime Minister, who is the main architect of this program, has gone on record to say that the Ministry of Local Government will be retired. Because you cannot have a Ministry of Local Government with a big stick supervising the regional corporation and say you're devolving power. But I will deal with that later on in the presentation. So what we are saying, local government is also psychological. It is beyond garbage collection, it is beyond retaining walls, it is beyond community centers and empty lots and mosquitoes. Almost every decision made by central government has an effect on what I call our software. Our hearts and our minds, our sense of well-being, our sense of autonomy, our sense of identity and belonging, and most importantly, our sense of community. Our sense of being able to make a difference in our basic capacity to dream and to passionately pursue those dreams are really being taken away from us by central government because you are not in control of your own communities. Centralization of decision-making affects our need and our ability to unite and build stronger communities. So again, I want to make a brave statement. Centralized government is more likely to be the problem than the solution. And I'll tell you how local government is not working as presently construed, and the best litmus test to that, and I call on my MPs here in the front line there, it is the amount of people that come to see you on a Thursday evening. Because every member of parliament here will tell you there are hundreds, more than 100, and if you don't have a appointment system, you will have about 300 people coming to see you for what? They're coming to see you to ask for simple things that's supposed to be delivered naturally from the system of local government reform. And I want to warn you, MPs, your main duty as a member of parliament, according to the Constitution, is that you are a legislator. You are there to go to the parliament to make laws to govern Trinidad and Tobago. And your prime responsibility while you owe allegiance to your constituent cannot be to fix every drain, fix every pothole, fix every broken street lights, because it will just consume your time. And you will become unproductive, inefficient, and you will be deemed incompetent at the end of your term. It is because the system is not working in your favor. And it is only when local government reform takes charge of what it's supposed to take charge of that you now will be given the space to do things that you were voted into office to do, which is to make legislation for the country, to make policy decisions, to be part of a cabinet to run the country at a level of articulating policy for the country. So the major impediments preventing existing local government structure from being consistent, relevant, sensitive, and cost-effective, I will deal with about 5 points. First and foremost, political interference, manipulation. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the politics of Trinidad is what it is. Okay? But in the local government reform agenda, what we are saying that this reform process will be apolitical. Because the powers that will be put into the hands of the chairman of San Juan Lavantil. In San Juan Lavantil, I think there are 12 councillors, 11 PM. How much? 13? 12 PNM, 1 UNC. So the powers that we give to Mr. Roberts in this local government reform process will be the same powers that the chairman of DB Penal will be having. And ladies and gentlemen, by the way, let me just tell you, DB Penal has 12 UNC and 0 PNM. It is as broad as it is wide. But the local government reform agenda is apolitical. It is transferring power and authority into the hands of the communities. Inadequate funding. As line minister with responsibility for local government, I know the pains you all suffer. Okay? And everybody and successive administration has said local government is underfunded. But local government is underfunded by whosoever is in authority. Because the whole system is so locked in inertia that nothing new happens. I'll give you a good example of inadequate funding. They're asking me where we will get funds to fund the local government process. Take playgrounds, for example. I asked the Minister of Sports to give me a list of the facilities that comes under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Sports and the Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago. You know what the list? Here's the Crawford Stadium, the Atto Bolden Stadium, the Larry Gomes Stadium, well, the Brian Lara complex when it is finished, and all the indoor sporting complexes. It's about 15. There are something like over 400 recreation grounds in Trinidad and Tobago that falls under the jurisdiction of the regional corporations. Now, an average regional corporation gets about $4 million to manage over 70 to 100 grounds in there. Depends on the size of your thing. It is obviously insufficient. But lo and behold comes the Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago. And they just enter your talk and start to put up lights all over, build pavilion and do all sorts of things. Nobody knows from whence they came. What process did they use to say which ground should have lights and which ground they should build a pavilion on? because that falls under the jurisdiction of the local government authority. So, if the Ministry of Sports, through the sports company, spends $300 million on dealing with recreation grounds, obviously that money naturally resides with the regional corporation. My brother Heinz is here. There's a program in the Ministry of Works called PURE. PURE spends approximately $1 billion a year in road paving. At least 40% of the roads that are paved in PURE are minor roads that fall under the jurisdiction of the regional corporation. If the regional corporation is restructured with the quality of staff that could implement projects like these, that is $400 million coming your way, Because not that Mr. Hines want to pave minor roads, It is because the local government architecture and the local government infrastructure doesn't have the manpower and the expertise to manage some of those projects. That is why it has been centralized in the Ministry of Works under a particular program called PURE. So when we go through the reform process and we put in new structures in the regional corporation, then and only then, the monies are available. It is just that the money is now allocated in a very centralized model. And it's the decentralization process now that will bring the type of resources that you all need in the regional corporation. A sluggish administrative structure that only facilitates unnecessary bureaucracy, we know that. And obviously, there is a lack of transparency, which I will deal with when I discuss the reform agenda in particular. Local government has become ineffective and burdened because, and I mentioned this already, but I'll say it again, there's a Ministry of Local Government. And ladies and gentlemen, let me make one thing clear. The Ministry of Local Government is not local government. The Ministry of Local Government is central government. Central government is local government is the corporations. That is why we are saying we can do without a Ministry of Local Government. Because you are empowering the regional corporations to handle their own affairs. They report to the Minister of Finance on fiscal matters. They account to the Auditor General on matters of transparency and effective use of state funds. And who is their boss? Not me. Their bosses in the regional corporation are you. You, the burgesses, will determine how effective they have been once every 3 years, when you vote them in or you vote them out. So they will now be accountable to you, the burgesses of the corporation. So our vision, finally, for a fully operationalized and networked local government system, it is imperative to people-centered development and accomplishment of any of our national goals. We envisage a quantum leap in all aspects of community endeavor, whether it's health and safety, public spaces, the environment, local culture, the economy and commerce, communication and the media, and information technology. All aspects of your community will be handled better. Your ability to fix or plan your own roads, to build a retaining wall, or to launch a festival, all have direct impact on the quality of life in your community. And ladies and gentlemen, local government reform puts that power in your hands. Now, let me just spend the next 15 minutes or so dealing specifically with what the PNM manifesto says and what our agenda is. The 2015 PNM manifesto vision for local government seeks to remove all the red tape and bureaucracies that prevent local government bodies from doing their work in an effective and efficient manner. We plan to revolutionize and bring the system in line with the recurrent recommendations of various administration and committees that have been set up in the past. The PNM manifesto, as everybody knows, we have said that over and over again, is now official government policy, and we plan to implement official government policy. Let me now deal with the specific aspect of our local government reform agenda. First and foremost, secure funding. With legislative changes, the local government bodies will now be able to collect and retain land and building taxes. And I say collect and retain with a formula. Because Mr. Imbut keeps saying, one of the issues of tax collection is leakage. Because we don't have a system to effectively collect the revenues that are due to the state. Now, if land and building taxes now fall under the direct ambit of local government, it is a smaller piece of geography. You will have more focused manpower to go after the people. And because it is not centralized. So if Lavantil East Mover, not Lavantil East, but San Juan Lavantil knows its cadre of buildings, what the taxes are. So their income revenue for that year, let us say, is $35 million. They know who the people owe them the $35 million. The $35 million coming into their coffers for them to spend on their communities. So they will make much more effort and greater effort to collect those taxes as compared to the Ministry of Finance. It makes so much common sense. So it is one area that Mr. Young and myself and Mr. Young in particular, through the Office of the AG and the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, will be looking to revise the taxation legislation so that the local government bodies could collect and retain those local taxes. Most important now, following the THA model, is we're going to hand over executive authority to councillors. I know councillors should clap for that, because all you're really at a loss because you are accountable to your burgesses, but you have no executive authority. So how can you be accountable without executive power? It is just a paradox. Okay? So you now will be accountable, and all this thing about is the administration and the CEO and the CEO and the CEO. All them things will done. Okay? Because you will now have executive authority similar to the secretaries in the Tobago House of Assembly. So now you will have a level of responsibility and executive power that almost not quite like a cabinet minister. Because you will be in charge of a certain portfolio within your regional corporation, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is health, whether it is what have you, just similar to Tobago. So now you become accountable to your burgesses. And you can no longer hide now and say, I have no authority. Okay? Because we are giving you the authority under this local government reform process. And ladies and gentlemen, let me warn you one thing. With devolution of power, with new levels of authority, comes greater accountability. And as a P&M administration, let me warn all you one time. We will not support corruption. Okay? Because, as I said at a previous consultation, if we are a society of corrupt people, you might as well centralize the corruption because few people will thief. If you decentralize corruption, you just decentralize it for more people to have access to the public purse. So, with responsibility and authority, you are now become accountable. You will be accountable to the Minister of Finance. You will be accountable to the Auditor General. You will be accountable to your communities through a consultation process. And we will be encouraging burgesses to report councillors for misbehavior. Because you just cannot get this authority and do not be accountable and be discreet in how you handle it. Thirdly, we'll be giving you new responsibilities. Remember when I made the point about the county council system and the regional corporations, saying that the schedule of responsibilities was almost identical. Under this new local government reform exercise, we will be giving new responsibilities to the local government corporation. School maintenance. If you in San Juan Lavantil have 8 secondary schools and 65 primary schools, isn't it better that you manage the repairs during the vacation so to make sure that all schools are open on time when the summer holidays or the August holidays are completed? As we speak now, one company called the Education Facilities Company is responsible for 200 plus secondary schools and over 600 primary schools. It is just an act in futility. Okay? And these are some of the new responsibilities that will be coming to local government bodies. So you have more focused attention into the deliverables. And it is really in your interest. Because if you subdivide the schools by electoral districts, one councillor may be responsible for 4 primary schools and 1 secondary school. But he will be watching that like a hawk. And he will make sure, because he has to please his burgesses, that those schools are repaired on time. And he will look at the contract management system, because all those contracts now will be coming through the corporation, through their own tendering and procurement procedures. Social welfare delivery. This is something that was started by Patrick Manning, where he wanted a social welfare worker in each electoral district. Because social welfare, again, could be better handled at the level of the regional corporation. Because all politics is local, you know. You know more than anybody else who are the families at risk. Who is the old lady who is getting along to get her pension? Okay? Which family is suspicious of child abuse or incest or crime? So you know, through the social service delivery system, through the councillors, you'll have better control of that, and it will be more equitable. But ladies and gentlemen, let me just tell all you something. Successive administrations spend $6 to $7 billion a year on social services. And then when you watch, the poverty level is the same. And people still complain that they're not getting what they're supposed to get. You know why? Because the system is not efficient. And out of that $6 billion, probably $1 billion only reaches down to the people who actually need the services. So the state at the central level can boast, but no Minister of Social Development could go and boast that the budget is $7 billion for social services. What are the people who in need is getting for that? And it all has to do with how the system is administered. And can it reach and filter down to the level where it is most needed? It is our thinking, just like school maintenance, social service delivery, will have a devolution of authority in line with our local government reform agenda. Sporting programs, agriculture, local tourism, for example. Because every corporation will tell you, when you speak to them, they have tourism potential. This obviously has. They have Maracas, Las Cuevas. Blanchishes all here too? No. Maracas, Las Cuevas up to La Fillette. They go to Toco Sandy Grande. Well, they came to be the king of ecotourism. They have all of the northeast coast. You go to Mayaro, we have the southeast coast in Mayaro. You go to Moruga, you have the south coast. So local tourism, obviously, could fall within the ambits of, as they develop their own unique sites and try to attract local tourists into their communities. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new areas. We'll have the other areas. Something that the Prime Minister wants is called employment exchange. Within your corporation, you should be able to have a database of unemployed people. And now, through a centralized system with the ministries, you should be able to match skills from your community with the needs of central government and local government corporation, and even within the private sector in your community. Dr. Rowley always gives this example that he went to a CPA conference in the UK, and he went to the island of Jersey. Those are the Channel Islands offshore in the English Channel. And he asked a member of parliament in Jersey, what is your unemployment rate? Expecting the member of parliament to say 5% or 6%. He said, we have 164 unemployed people on the island. And he pulled up his computer screen, he have them by name, age, skill sets, and they are waiting to be matched. into an upcoming job. We may probably never reach there, but at least the model is supposed to drive us to greater heights. So database management, because you all are MPs, half of the people coming to look for a job. You don't have a database in your mind where this job could be. And if you spend your time now trying to match all these people with jobs, you become an employment agency. And you have no time to do what other responsibilities that you have. So this is some of the changes that we're looking at. Another aspect we're looking at is local contractors. And ladies and gentlemen, this one hits hard. When the regional corporation has to tender through the Central Tenders Board, you could have a box drain building right here in Santa Cruz and the contractor from Pinal. Nothing is wrong with that in terms of constitutionally, but something doesn't smell right with that in terms of driving the local economy. Because if the box drain is given to a Santa Cruz contractor or a San contractor or somebody within your corporation, the chances are that the workers will be from here. When they get their pay, they will buy in local groceries, local shops, local mini-marts. So you have the multiplier effect in the community. So by and large, we will want to institute a system where cooperation work within the confines of the constitutional remit, because you have to understand that everybody is entitled to seek work anywhere in Trinidad and Tobago. So we have to define a system where you should have some weighting process to give preference to local contractors under local jurisdiction. Effective municipal policing, we have gone public on that. In our manifesto, you will see 100 municipal police officers per corporation. As we speak, I am in discussion with the Minister of National Security and the Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General to see what structure we'll have for municipal police. As we speak, municipal police reports to the CEO of the corporation. Very little, 5, 6, some people has, some corporation has 10. We are going to have 100 per corporation. And then, all these, I have to be careful what I say now, all these spurious programs like Comfort Police and all this thing, that will give way. And the municipal police will now be in charge of their municipality as the first course for citizens to come into the law enforcement thing. And then with higher levels of crime, the national police could take charge. So the municipal police arrangement is very community-based. And I think it will go a long way in assisting in the crime situation. Developmental control, we will be implementing new legislation so that more authority will be given to the local government corporations to approve plans, to approve buildings, to approve even some subdivisions within their own community. And finally, disaster management. I want to congratulate the regional corporation. This is one aspect of the regional corporation. As first respondents, is doing an excellent job. The other day they had some roof blowout in Mova. Within hours, the regional corporation was on the ball. The disaster management unit kicked in place. As first respondent, you all have been doing an excellent job. You will be handed more responsibility, more autonomy, more resources to be first respondents in this disaster management scenario. However, I just want to tell you that ultimately, disaster management will always be a function of national security. Because disaster management has to fall under the ambit of the Minister of National Security. Because when a natural disaster takes place, the bigger disaster is not a natural disaster, it's how people behave after a disaster. There's looting, there's all sorts of things. So in terms of natural disasters, in all countries of the world, it falls under the Ministry of National Security. Regional development planning. For those of you who remember the 2013 local government election, the PNM produced 14 individual manifestos for the corporations as a blueprint to how they can develop their communities. We encourage you to take back a look at this document, edit it, and make some improvements if you so desire. And finally, I want to touch 2 final points. boundaries. And let me just focus on boundaries a while. As we speak, there are 14 regional corporations and the Tobago House of Assembly. So if we have 14 regional corporations with 14 executive councils, I ask you the question, is that over-government? Should we reduce the number of regional corporations? I have no answer. That is what this consultation is about. Because really and truly, 14 corporations with 14 executive councils for 1.3 million people is a lot. Okay? But once the corporation, you see, human nature is like this. When you give something, you can't take it back. You know? But so if you already have the 14 corporations, it's difficult to say reduce 14 to 12. But all I ask you is to consider that position. Secondly, boundary changes. So even though you're keeping the 14 corporation, are the boundaries meandering in a way that suits the local community? I might hit a Japanese here, but let me just still say it, because I'm brave. Does the community of Laventille more suited to be placed within the city of Port of Spain or to be placed within the San Juan Laventille Regional Corporation? I just ask a question, ma'am. Okay? Because I also put it to you. You cannot tell me St. James is part of Port of Spain and the Trinidad Hilton, right up over the East Dry River, is not part of Port of Spain. Because the city of Port of Spain and its suburbs, okay, is what a city is made up of. New York, Houston, London, what have you. Mr. Hines lived in London. The suburbs, okay? And Laventille is a natural suburb of Port of Spain. It looks towards Port of Spain for all its activity. I wouldn't decide that. And I wouldn't adjudicate as to where Laventille will fall. That is why we'll have a consultation here in San Juan Laventille to get your views. We'll have a consultation with the Port of Spain City Corporation to have your view. But I cannot see, as a sensible human being, and as a line minister with responsibility for this, that the Trinidad Hilton is not in Port of Spain, but quite down in St. James is part of Port of Spain. If the center of Port of Spain is Frederick Street and Cipriani statue in the heart of town, according to this sparrow. Good? So these are thought-provoking ideas, but it's really for you to give us the information. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, organization and structure. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I have rated up and championed the cause for local government reform during my entire discourse. But I also want to say, as presently constituted, local government is one of the most inefficient and unproductive parts of government. I make no apologies for that. 8 o'clock in the morning, you don't know where none of the gangs are. And you go to the regional corporation office at 10 o'clock and you could hardly find a secretary. Far less officers to serve the people. So, while you clamor for the authority, and you clamor for the power, and you clamor for all the new responsibilities, you all have to prove to central government that you can accept it and deliver it with the level of efficiency that we require. So that is why the technical committee of this transformation process is mandated to come up with new structures and new skill sets that could populate this new responsibility. As we speak, most regional corporations do not even have a single engineer. They don't have quantity surveyors. They have no procurement experts. They have no supply chain managers. And all these new skill sets of the 21st century do not reside at the level of the regional corporation. And one of the most attractive things about this local government reform to me personally is the avenue it will bring for young people to get meaningful jobs at the level of the government. New skills. Ladies and gentlemen, we have invested $6 billion a year in GATE for the last 15 years. Very good. But what are the GATE graduates doing? Good? Because we didn't go through the full cycle of thought, Because when you give free tertiary education, if the economy cannot absorb the graduates, they are more frustrated than if they didn't even go to school, Because I make the point that underemployment is sometimes worse than unemployment itself. Because you all have children. You would like to know, you send your child to university, to UE or UTT. They come out with a bachelor's degree. You tell them, go back and further your studies. You come out with a master's degree. And when they graduate with a master's and now you cock up your nose high, they can't get a job. And when they get a job, they are totally underemployed. Because they get a job as a clerk one in the public service with a master's. There are a lot of people like that, OJTs, people with masters and sometimes, not PhD, but masters. They go in an OJT program in a ministry or a company and they tell them, file this for me and photocopy that for me and do that. And the training component is not there. So this will be bringing in a whole new cadre of skills in 14 corporations so that graduates in Sandy Grande could now work in Sandy Grande and ease up Mr. Hines and the traffic along the East-West corridor. Okay? Kuva Tabaki Talparo people now could have opportunities to gain employment in their own communities. And this is the type of thinking that we're putting onto this. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, on the legislation part, after I conclude my presentation in 2 minutes, Minister Young and myself will take the stage here to field your question. A significant component of this exercise is legislative change. We plan to revise in a significant way the Municipal Corporation Act, the taxation laws, an amendment to Section 69 of the Act, which provides for standing committees. And if it means creating a brand new piece of legislation, Mr. Young, we will so do. Because we want to, at the end of this consultation, want to know what is the end product. And if we know what the end product looks like, we will know what steps we have to put in place to give you that end product. In terms of the timetable, I want to give the assurance local government election is due by the 21st of October 2016. Under the Act, we have a 3-month period in which to hold the election. So the latest the local government election will be held is January 21st, 2017. And I want to give you the assurance on behalf of the Prime Minister that local government election will not be postponed. It is going to be kept within the constitutionally due time. What that means is that we hope to complete the legislative agenda by September, early October. Mr. Young is in charge of that, and he has the whole CPC's office working diligently. As a matter of fact, the member on the technical committee is the deputy director of the CPC, and she's working very hard. She's very knowledgeable on what the local government reform agenda would look like. And we will have the legislation in place in time, probably very likely towards a joint select committee. We will hold the local government elections on the premise that this is the reform agenda that will be now going in. And the new council now will have a 3-year period of transition. So by the time we hold the other election in 2019, 1 year before 2020 general election, all supposed to be fine, working well on the local government side. I also want to encourage you to join our conversation on Facebook page, on our Facebook page, Local Government Reform Consultation, or also to go on ttlocalmatters.com for the white paper and for any media updates that will be so, because we have a big social media drive on this process also. So I hope I have done some justice in articulating what this administration looks at as the local government agenda. I think it is very, very exciting. It is the first time serious changes in the governance of Trinidad and Tobago will be taking place. Nothing like this has never happened since independence to now. in terms of local government reform, and where you have to get accustomed now in managing your own affairs. Okay, where the community will now have participation in what decisions are making. Mr. Young and I was even discussing that part of the legislation may demand consultation with the public before a decision is taken. We may very well put that in the legislation, because if you want community involvement, you could legislate it. I mean, I don't want to backpedal too much, but I normally say at these meetings, the whole idea of state government and community government, United States. And my famous Walmart example. If Walmart wants to go into a community to build a store, Walmart could know Obama, that can help him. It's town council meeting in his tail, and if the tongue says, you can't come there, you can't come there. And that is the type of power we want to give to local communities. So in other words, if somebody is going to open a big quarry up in Santa Cruz to cut down a hill, the Environmental Management Authority and the Ministry of Energy should not have full jurisdiction over that. You, the community who have to smell the sand and breathe the dust, must have a say in whether a contractor comes to open a quarry in your space. And that is the empowerment that communities will now have. And as I said, I discussed it with Minister Young, we may well legislate that so that the community, by law, will have a direct input into your decision making. So I hope you like what I've said. Okay? And I will just conclude by showing a final video before I wrap up.
That's Frank and Mo from Frank and Mo and Company. They checking out that construction going on up the hill across the river. A new residential something. Frank and Mo doing the environmental impact thing to make sure that a compound that big don't tie the whole place now. They get that contract from the council. Oi Chris, here, have a blessed day. Oops, almost forget my breakfast. Thanks Shireen, you too Nibs. Texted in my order since I get up. And in May, local theatre company School Street Performance Group premieres its new musical at the School Street Community Centre in May. I in that. A couple years ago, there was no local news. And even if it had any, I absolutely wasn't taking out no iPad to get nothing nowhere around here. But things different now. That's Maureen making her way to the new clinic. Local taxes build that. Carla just moved back from Canada. Toronto have nothing on School Street. Oh, by the way, that's the school they named School Street after. My brother worked on the new ventilation system for them. Culo Brizo. His office is 3 streets down so. On time. Yes, the bus is CNG. We petitioned for a few more and we're working on insisting that only CNG buses can use our length of the bus route. The carbon monoxide destroying the limestone caves in the quarry, and that will kill the tourism in the area. Now I see that the Komuto Council and the Pointe-a-Pierre Council asking for the same things. We's pioneers.
So ladies and gentlemen, this final video is intended to juxtapose against the first video you saw and to really paint a picture of what the future could look like for the local government reform process. We'll have a consultation part now where Mr. Young and I will take the stage to field your questions. I want to tell you that express your views. If you like what you heard, you can say it. If you don't like what you've heard, you can still say it. If you want to make an adjustment or add some new dimensions to what was discussed, you can so do. If the ball is in your court, this is your time to speak. Every single thing, if you see the amount of camera and computers around here, everything you say is recorded verbatim. Then it will be transposed, and there's piles and piles of document that will be scrutinized, so we will take out every idea. You are not speaking here, and your voice just go through the wind. every single word is like the parliament, is like the Hansard. There's a Hansard reporter here that is taping and documenting everything you see. So trust me, all the points you make and all the views you have expressed will be considered in a very serious moment. I thank you all very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carl Cupid, and I jot down some notes here that I will just read for the audience and for the officials. The first point I have here relates to numbering of houses, identifying each house in a community, regardless of where it is, whether it's on the top of the mountain. It must have some number that is registered somewhere. The second point here is it deals with the same housing business. Many shacks have electricity. People who live in, they're not on the radar, so to speak, but there's GPS, so we could spot them anywhere. Number three, I have here is, it has to do with a community college type learning center in each district, whatever you call it, district, corporation. At the level of community college, similar to the COSTAT, the COSTAT model. Number four, I am talking about the tributary transportation system. It's more or less the PH people who feed the main artery into and out of Port of Spain and Grandy and so on, the east-west corridor and other places. Number five, where's number five? Oh, number five has to do with, you would no doubt have an adequate cadre of professionals at each level, in each corporation, whatever it will be called then. Number six, you have to start planning for climate change. It's not exactly too far away, but we should start planning for that. Number seven, I think that, well, you mentioned about the repairing of schools and so on, repair and maintenance. I think some principals need to be trained. We're not making them into maintenance managers, but they must know something about maintenance management. There's this big compound with all sorts of equipment. Even some of them have they have swimming pools, etc., and mechanical equipment. The principal must have in front of him, or on his system, maintenance schedule and so on and so forth. So he would know when the maintenance people are falling short. I could speak for the rest of the evening on a lot of topics, but I know other people would want to give their opinions and so on. I thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. And Mr. Cupid, feel free to come back to the microphone if you want to contribute later.
Thank you very much, sir.
Well, quite a lot asked and said there, Minister.
I mean, it's 7 or 8 points. I can't even recall all. But the first point on numbering of houses, I mean, in a modern society and in developed countries, all houses are numbered. That largely is a function of the TT Post. And I know they were planning a zip code system in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not sure how far that has reached. But really and truly, the level of scientific knowledge in terms of our address system is much wanting. And it is a point well taken, and we will probably bring it up with the relevant authorities. With regards, I don't know what you meant by the shacks have current. You're saying the shacks don't deserve current? They are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. They are human beings. There are issues with squatting, and we plan to regularize squatting in a very human-friendly way. But there is a proliferation of squatting in Trinidad and Tobago. This government plans to put a stop to it. But at the same time, you have to show a little human touch when you deal with citizens of Trinidad and Tobago.
Mr. Young.
I think you've raised just by the issue of the houses, and as you call them, shacks. I mean, they're not shacks, they're differently built, but you've touched on two pieces of legislation there The first is under the property tax. That is the law of Trinidad and Tobago. What you're required to do is a valuation and have a roll. So it's to get the houses onto the roll and then for valuation to take place. And that will assist, that is how that ties into the local government. With respect to what Minister Khan touched on and the squatting, we are actively looking, and we've had presentations at the Ministry of the Attorney General by the Land Settlement Agency, because that is a policy decision. I think it was in the 90s or the early 2000s, a decision was taken that squatters who existed at that point in time would be regularized, but you're doing a constant balancing so as to not to encourage people to go and squat on state land. So it is something that is attracting our attention. And that will fall into the local government, because when there's a regularization from a taxation point of view, we need to find some sort of middle ground there. With respect to the management of the schools, I think principals already have that responsibility, because as a principal, you're in charge to an extent of your school compound, and it would be incumbent on you. It's not a legislative obligation, but as a principal, you would want to make sure that your premises are properly maintained, etc. And that will now feed into the local government reform in making sure that the schools are maintained adequately.
Mr. Watkins.
Pleasant good evening to all ministers on stage, ladies, gentlemen. Anthony Watkins, resident of San Juan. So I'm here as Citizen Watkins this evening. I just want to say to the ministers and to the assembled multitude that this local government change that's planned, it's necessary, it's a great aspiration, and it's noble. I think it is something that will change the face of Trinidad and Tobago and the lives of our citizens. However, if we're going to be doing something good, we must make sure that we do it well. So I want to raise a couple of issues in there. One of them is that this whole process really is going to require some changes, and the changes will take us to some transformed state. But leaving Egypt and arriving at the promised land are the easy parts of the journey. The problem is in the desert. What is that process between what we do in October or November and when we arrive at the end state? And we need to address the operational issues, structure, process, technology, but we must not lose sight of our people. We must be sure that we consider the impact of this on people. Couple issues inside there. I like the issue of identifying the new competencies, and that's absolutely necessary. Great to say that we're going to have local contractors providing services, but often when we make that call, we find suppliers of services inadequately prepared to engage in a formal process. And I would like to flag to the local corporation that we have to begin to prepare and develop our local service suppliers so that when the time comes, they are ready legally and organizationally to be able to meet some of the contracting obligations. While the current or incumbent leaders in the corporations are running the business of the corporation, I'd also want to flag, and to you ministers, but certainly to the transition team, that leading change is a job in itself. And while somebody is running a corporation, they're not going to be able to lead the change and the scope of which is planned, envisaged, and that will come on us. Along with that, I'd want to suggest that I'm sure we will engage a lot of communication, but I would really want to go to the other end of the communication and ensure that we have effective and open listening mechanisms to be sure that people talk with us, people share their ideas, and that those things are listened to in the places where decisions are being made and where activities are being planned. And the other end of it is something I think that Minister Khan referred to, the fact that people will have difficulty letting go of things. So while new responsibilities and duties may be coming out to the local government end of it, we need to also consider the people at the other end who will no longer have some things within their remit, and how do we help them to manage some of those losses and the letting go process at that end of it. Those are my thoughts and suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Any responses from the state?
Well, I mean, Mr. Watkins is an organizational expert par excellence, if I should say so.
I take your point that the management of change is a job by itself, even independent of what the technical committee is doing as we speak. And you know, the science of change management, I mean, there are now degrees in change management offered at certain universities. We cannot take it lightly because there's a natural tendency for the human being to oppose change because people live in their comfort zone. So it's something I will take on board, and we will see how we can bring the change management process and dovetail it into the entire system.
I think if I may, one of the points you raised touched on what Minister Khan was speaking about earlier, when you say we must listen and we must provide a mechanism. Before the listening part, you have to provide a mechanism for people to voice their concerns. And he touched on it in his presentation. One of the things we're looking at is an active and obligatory consultation process. So for certain decisions that are going to affect the community, and it exists in, for example, the EMA legislation, if there's certain things that are going to take place, you have to publish, this is what I plan to do, this is what I intend to do, and it will be to find the right formula that when a decision is crossing a certain hurdle and a threshold, it then necessitates a publication of this is what I intend to do, and thereby allowing a process for people to come forward and voice their opinions, for that to be taken into consideration before a decision is taken place, and more so on the planning aspect. So it is something we're looking at from the planning aspect, something that will change the landscape of the corporation's burgesses. But also what we're looking at from an accountability point of view is now that you're giving the corporations and you're devolving and giving them more responsibility, especially over finances, similar to what takes place in Parliament, is we may legislate that they must come and present, this is how we spent the budget. So you have the equivalent of a meeting like this, a town hall, where it provides the citizens and the burgesses the ability to come and ask questions. And in my view, it must be twofold, both at the deciding what is to be budgeted for stage, so the corporations can decide how they will expend the money, because you're always going to have limited resources to give the citizens the opportunity and the ability to voice their concerns as to where money should be expended, and then a decision will be taken, and then at the end of the process, to come and be accountable to the citizens for how the money was spent.
And just to make one final point on the consultation and that Minister Young spoke about, and I did. Ladies and gentlemen, really and truly, the average Trinidadian doesn't feel empowered, you know. So even though, for example, EMA has a consultation on some quarries going to think, the average person from San Juan saying, they don't know what they're doing. Yes, we can't stop that. Or, you know, the big boys involved in that, and who are we to think? People genuinely do not feel empowered. And this local government transformation process, as I said earlier in my presentation, is a mind game too. We want the community now to start to feel empowered, start to feel that I could stop a project if it doesn't redound to the interest of my community. And get that mindset in your mind so that when if we enact consultation or with the community, get that you are empowered by law, that you could come now as a group or as a citizen group or as a community and say, we want A, we do not want B. Okay, and feel empowered. So this now is not only legislation, it is not only restructuring, it is but a psychological thing now that for the first time, if one message I wanted to bring during this consultation, we are hoping at the end of this transformation process that communities for the first time could genuinely feel empowered and they are to some extent in charge of the destiny of their own community.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Royce Russell, Barataria. All protocol observed. I have three issues seriously killing our community, choking our community. First is the bars. I can't get home at all Thursday, Friday, Saturday because of at least 6 bars double park in the street. I can't get home driving. We have about 6 roadside mechanic in Barataria. vehicles parked on the boat side, on rocks and whatever. And these are things happening for umpteen years and nobody addressing it. And it reached that critical point now where it's really killing our community, the bars and the roadside mechanics. Now, I don't want to be too negative because the minister is here for community development, which yesterday we had a nice opening of our center on the positive side. The other issue is we have an industrial park in Barataria, and I don't think anybody had any plan about that extension of that industrial park. 3rd Avenue and 6th Avenue, all they have this 20-feet trailer bringing down lines overhead. This is wrong. I mean, they didn't plan for this thing to be growing so fast, and we can't even use our street because the trailer take over the whole of Barataria. And the Minister of Works are here, Mr. Hines. I hope this solution could help because from the highway they could open a road right there where all the industrial parks are, so they don't have to come to Barataria, damage our road, damage the overhead line, and more we report, nobody and pay us any attention. So, Mr. Minister, I'm glad about this consultation, and I hope this complaining will help with our bars in Barataria, our roadside mechanic, and the 20-foot trailer passing day and night. People cannot sleep and noise and all these things. I hope this is addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Any responses, Mr. Young?
If I may, this brings home a very important point. The truth is that there are existing laws and existing statutes that govern what has just been brought forward there. I mean, with respect to bars have to get licensed. So if residents have issues with that, they need to go forward and bring it home. And it goes on to Minister Khan's last point, which is about empowerment. It makes no sense, and I throw this challenge out to all of you. It makes no sense sitting down in your home complaining, gathering as a group complaining and doing nothing about it. Write to the Ministry of Planning, write to the City Corp, the San Juan Laventil Regional Corporation, because we have on the books now existing laws that can be enforced. In fact, recently, just before getting involved in active politics, I did take that up on behalf of some residents, and we challenged it, and we used the planning laws, we used the Municipal Corporation Act, because you're required to have approvals, and we prevented people from incursion into various communities. So you need to get active. You need to do your part to ensure that the laws are enforced.
Thank you. Next, sir.
Good evening. My name is Joe. Well, first, I'd just like to say thank you very much to this present administration for this initiative. I was very disappointed when it seemed that the previous administration had no interest in it, and this administration is to be applauded. How I see this is an attempt to redistribute democracy. What I hope for is that we're going to end up with great progress and economic dynamism, that people are going to see the connection between democracy and economic progress. And what I imagine is that Sawa will try to have better roads than elsewhere, that they will try to have better policing than elsewhere, that they will try to have better schools than elsewhere, all under local government ambit in some way. Communities that are safer, better police, better planned, and that I will decide that I'm going to leave Tacarigua and come to live Sawa once more. No, but this is what this process should be. I grew up here as a child. I used to bathe in Sun Valley. I can't remember the name of the pool down by the Silver Bridge. We used to bathe just before there. We used to bathe in Concord. We used to go to Maracas, Las Cuevas, walk through the hills. And I don't feel safe, or haven't felt safe to do that in many, many years, to camp at night, especially with women folk. And I would hope that one of the changes that local government transformation will bring is that I could do all of those things, catch fish with my grandchildren, camp out, picnic out, clean picnic facilities, policed. There's a presence of the law so that I can have a real good time in Trinidad and Tobago like I used to have up until about age 18. So I think also maybe it might be good if there could be a role for those who don't have any who don't have any active affiliation with a political party to be elected representatives. You know, for whatever reason, you're not active in any particular party, but you'd love to serve. And I've seen that where I've lived before, outside of Trinidad and Tobago. I think that would really energize a lot of people who don't necessarily want to be labeled in a particular way. Another thing that we'd love to see here, I believe, is the ability to tell a parliamentarian, a councillor, sorry, that we don't want you anymore. And if 50 of us get signatures and we walk down to the town hall and we have a meeting and it's decided, you're gone. And if you're going to do something really important, that you call us all and we go and we ballot, and depending upon what it is, that is what determines the outcome. You know, in China, as well as in Trinidad and Tobago actually, local governments have more power than even to some degree our central government. There is a very low-level court in China that handles local non-capital matters. It's almost like an arbitration or mediation system. I believe we have a lot of people who could deal with issues in their community with those kinds of powers. And what I would expect is that rather than restricting the remit of local government the way that possibly we think of it, and to really get people engaged and excited, that we talk about education, being responsible not for the school, but for the curriculum, for how the school is run. Training, being responsible for, we need more carpenters, we need more plumbers. Healthcare, we want a hospital right here. We will build our hospital. It's not as if we build a hospital and somebody that doesn't believe is accountable to us runs it. We build a hospital, we hire the people, we determine what the quality would be. Housing, I know that my neighbor down the road really needs a house. Why should that be decided by the HDC? And why should a house cost $500,000 and they can't avoid it? We can do things in this community to make that more possible and more doable. We don't like garages in our neighborhood, throwing oil in the drain, sending the same water that we have to, the oil in the water we have to drink in the Caroni Arena Dam and so on. So we have decided that these are the regulations for operations of garages. And we will get a lot of our money from fines, apart from licenses, fees, and permits. So like, for instance, when you go to use the bathroom in the Tagarigua, well, the Tunapuna market where I go to now, instead of paying $1, maybe the correct price is $5, but hopefully it will be clean, which is not the case at present. And I'm very concerned that we should have all of these graduates, we need them to regulate, inspect, supervise, assess, measure. We want lawyers, accountants, we want auditors to make sure that you have no corruption that is going on, that is not being prosecuted or punished. And we also want master electricians, master plumbers, master carpenters as part of the process. Not these people that I'm speaking of, or these roles or these responsibilities, to my mind, should be the responsibility of the central government to have these people as inspectors, enforcers, and regulators. So the central government has a regulatory, enforcement, inspection, and oversight role. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much. Some interesting ideas, Minister.
And, a lot of interesting ideas, a lot of it you don't really need to comment on. They're well received. I just want to comment on one point he made, and which I believe in, is that if this thing rolls out properly, and with time, there could be competition among corporations to attract business and to attract residents. Because like in the United States now, you will have the state of New Jersey having ads, come and invest in New Jersey because the taxes are low, the community is lovely, our school system is good, what have you. So if you have more autonomy for these corporations, they can now operate, I don't want to say mini states, but distinct areas to attract business, to attract the right type of community, to attract the right type of investment as they plan the future development of their corporation.
Agreed.
Yes, madam.
Good night, everybody. My name is Yvonne
Closer
George.
to the mic.
Yes, get closer to the microphone. It's on.
So?
Yes.
Yeah. Good night, everybody. My name is Yvonne George. I'm from Laventry Road, Sawo. My problem is squatting. I am a owner of 4.6 acres, and I am going through big trouble with human. They are threatening me for my own thing. I go to the police, no problem. It come like the land is their own. The time I go to the JP give me information. When I reach to the court with no trespassers and the different thing the JP gave me, my lawyer told me, you wouldn't reach nowhere with that. All you have to do is pay lawyers. I went to my representative. She informed me, she showed me that that's a big problem because squatting come like a norm. I paid so much money for my land, and within the time up to now, I haven't collect a rent, and it have 30 people renting on my land. 13. No rent for my land I paid for. When now I reached to the lawyers who my MP informed me to go to, the lawyer told me I have to put out $100,000 to certify that this land is mine when I have my deed, my golden deed. I would like to put my opinion. I'm not the, I can want to operate, man.
No, you just go close enough and it will capture you.
My opinion is squatting is a crime. You can get your debt from people who come and squat on your land. And next problem I have, the government, which is you all, said that you have to pay the same property tax. I built a house. Within my time, I did not finish to pay no property tax. But now that I have to pay the same property tax as you all said, what would it be? Because I don't know what to pay. And my next big problem is that those people who are renting on my land, they are going to pay property tax and they never pay me rent. I would like to know what should I do because I don't have $100,000 and I am the owner of the land which I paid $150,000 for. I would like to get some sort of help to own my land for my grandchildren.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions, Minister Young. Sounds like you.
Why didn't ask me?
I don't know why your lawyer would tell you the law is not going to help. The only way you will get proper recourse is through the courts. Quite frankly, $100,000 is absolutely ridiculous as a fee, and I have no fear of saying that.
Could I say something, please?
Yeah?
Yes. When I went to the lawyer, the reason why I said, she said that would be of no value because she said even though she write a letter,
No, the writing of the letter is not going to help. You're going to have a court determine that the land is yours. And you have to move quickly, otherwise they'll get something called adverse possession rights.
Yeah,
where regardless of whether you have the legal ownership, after 16 years, they will have extinguished your rights. So you need to file those claims in court. You also have available to you, you see signs all over Trinidad. Trespassers will be prosecuted in accordance with. So I don't know if that's what the JP was telling you, but you could bring your own private criminal, that's criminal legislation, and bring those claims against them. But the truth is, it is a difficult position, and the only way, as the law currently is, that you will get recourse is you need a judge to make an order that those people vacate the land and the land is yours.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you very much. I think,
Can I ask the next question?
is it related to the same issue or it's
No,
another
something
point?
else.
Okay, go ahead.
I would also like to know, landowner should pay, yeah. If you are a landowner and you're renting somebody your property as whatever it is and they build a house on it, when you go to pay your land tax, would you have to pay that property owning that person property tax, or do you pay for just your land tax alone?
Okay, thank you very much.
We're
Answer
actually in the
questions.
process of looking at the property tax and the land and building tax, which was actually repealed by the Property Act in 2009. You keep talking about renting, and you have people on your property renting. If you are the landlord and you're renting to them, you should have an agreement, preferably a written agreement. And yes, you will be, as the owner, you will be the person who is obligated to pay the land tax for the land. So you need to work that into your rent. Persons renting will not be the ones who are obligated to pay the tax.
Thank you very much, Minister Young. Yes, sir, you've been waiting for some time.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, honorable ministers, senators, government representatives, the people of the community, the constituency, and Trinidad and Tobago at large. I'm an entrepreneur, born in Barataria, national award holder in business. I have a question, off of a question that was raised. Barataria Industrial Park, for whom? Because we're talking about the community and we're talking about community business and community opportunity. And I'm asking myself a question. With the paradigm shift when this begins to happen, because I'm asking Barataria Industrial Park for who? Because the people of Barataria don't own the industrial park. And when the money shifts and billions started spending Barataria, with the contractors registered, live, born, bred, grown in Barataria, get access to these contracts? Or is Massey Stores, as is branching out in every community, will be qualified to tender and to bid, and the local contractor who's grown there is pushed out of their own community opportunity to make money rise and grow? So I want legislation to be put in place for that. I want protection for that. Because I'm born in Barataria and I don't have an industrial opportunity in Barataria. Am I going to be given privilege in this new legislation coming up? 35 years in business, I have priority to get one of the parks? Or is it going to be a company coming out of Arima, China, India, that is going to now register in Barataria and bid on the contracts for $150 million, and the Barataria contractor is pushed out? What are we doing about that? I would like that question to be answered. Yeah, so the other thing is, what are we doing about training the people who's taking over the councillors? It's all well and good to have a councillor with the power and the authority close to as powerful as a minister. But he's capable. Is he capable to drive that opportunity, to drive that power? Are you putting training and opportunity for him to develop and grow, to drive this forward successfully?
Okay. Thank you very much. I didn't get your name, sir.
My name is Ian Riley.
Thank you very much. Questions at both ministers?
Let me just deal with the second question. When you seek public office, you seek it under the pretext that you are qualified to execute the job you are asking the people to vote you for. So while there is some component of training to people who hold public office, ministers or parliamentarians or councillors, you are not training them to do their job, you know. They assume that they are qualified to do the job. That's why they offer themselves for office. But having said that, it is for the Burgesses now to determine if our
You all are electing them.
local government reform takes place, and it will take place. So you need a new caliber of councillor because you will now have executive power. Now, it is incumbent on the political parties' process to choose the right councillor or the right member of parliament, the right candidate for the election. So if party A, whosoever party A is, chooses somebody who the Burgesses feel are not qualified to carry out the duty
on the face of it, the councillor, the Burgesses will not vote for them. So it is not to say that anybody could go up for a councillor. It will mean now that if you have a new skill set that will demand to perform the role of a councillor, it is incumbent on the political parties that are offering the people to you to make the right selection.
Well, yeah, that is one part of it, but the administrative arm to drive the support to the council is going to take a lot of dynamics and change.
Yeah, but there will be training. But I don't want this. You're going to give the impression that you take an entry-level person, and then it is responsibility of the corporation to train them to do their job. That is not the case. You have to have some level of competencies to offer yourself to the people for that job. Well, but with regards we could close that there. But more importantly, with regards your business component, I don't know if Minister Young wants to make a comment on that, but I would just say, there's a limit to where we could carry this. I made the context about local contractors in the context of the regional corporation. But when you move out into the private sector, hey, it's fair game for everybody. Once you are a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, the Constitution allows you equal rights under the law. Okay? I was just making a specific case in terms of more often than petty contracts and small contracts within the ambit of the regional corporation. But where you carrying it now to the Barataria industrial parks and thing, I think that is going a little overboard because we are a small island.
No, well, to take the country forward, we have to go overboard in the state in which it's at presently. So
what you're saying, because you are from Barataria, you should be given preference in a $100 million contract on an industrial estate?
I just use that as an example. And I'm not talking about Barataria only. I'm talking about constituencies throughout Trinidad and Tobago. There should be some measure of opportunity, not protection, for community-based business people or contractors to have opportunity to grow from opportunity within their community. That's what I'm saying. And it's something that should be looked at carefully.
Thank you very much for those points.
You're pushing against an open door on that one.
And Minister Young, how would you legislate something like that?
The truth is it already, from a policy position, exists with the use, for example, CPEP. And actually, as a cabinet, we've given directives that it goes back to its roots, right? So CPEP is supposed to be, you're not supposed to have contracts forever. It's an incubation period, and we've directed that for the corporations and for the various constituencies, the contractors should come from there. As just one example, when we talk about legislating to protect or to help local business and local contractors, that legislation is for the contracts that would be awarded by the corporation. I don't think you were suggesting that outside of that, any construction going on, for example, in San Juan, Lavantil Corporation had to be, you could only get it if you're a contractor based there. But certainly one way that we intend to deal with it and to help persons from the respective communities is when it's community programs to be given out by the corporations. You look for persons in the communities. Have a registration process that at certain levels, and you can do it. Different tier contracts would be given to those from the community. I don't think you could say a contractor who's just started up gets the construction of the administrative complex for San Juan Lavantil Regional Corporation. But certainly the contracts, and it happens now, those contracts under $1 million, 500,000, and you go up with tiers, you can have a system that favors local content.
Thank you very much, Minister. This lady has been waiting for some time. Go ahead.
Good night. Florette de Leon, Lacano Road, Santa Cruz. Firstly, I want to say tonight is really bittersweet for me. I want to say congratulations to Minister Khan for really bringing this consultation, but 13 years too late, or I shouldn't say 13 years too late, 13 years later. 2003, June 3rd to be exact, and Tony is here, Tony Roberts, and he would remember that I submitted a report to this very government on changing the way social services delivery is carried out in the communities, in the 591 communities in Trinidad and Tobago. all of the things that people mention here about looking at boundary lines, looking at competition. I even mentioned things like urban, rural partnerships, transportation systems. And I talked about profiling the communities to find out exactly what is required in the communities and looking at whether it is preventative, remedial, supportive, whatever it is, services. Minister Khan, I am going to tell you, you are embarking on this transformation. And it means that if we are going to transform, it cannot be business as usual. There's no place for ministries because the ministry really exists to support the needs and the requirements of communities. So it is the needs and the requirements of communities that determines the functions that are carried out in the ministries. And that's the only way that ministries exist in the first place. And I'm glad that you mentioned about the THA because Mrs. Claudia Grooms-Duke couldn't get enough of my report. And in fact, we had several meetings after that, and I'm glad to hear that Tobago has taken some of what I had put forward. The whole question of paying for performance was raised in that report. The whole question of, having competition among the communities, 591, as I said. A lot of research was done and put into that report. Maybe, Tony might be able to say where the report is at this point, but I'm willing to share whatever I have of that report with you. It dealt with a lot of the legislation, whatever have you. Subsequent to that, and there's a problem with us in Trinidad and Tobago. We go based on friendship and on, a lot of paper, if you have certification and so on. And I agree with you, you must have a certain level of education. I returned to Trinidad and Tobago a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, after teaching emerging technologies of the 22nd century in the United States. And here it is, my university is telling me, I can't help you, you do not have a PhD, but come do a PhD with us, and then you can offer services here. Now, prior to that, I was a change management consultant for the European Union funded project in 24 countries within the health sectors. And I'm glad Minister Dial Singh is here, looking at health sector reform in these 24 countries. I can tell you, our attitudes here have to change. The 24 countries could not get enough of me. However, when we held a consultation here in Trinidad and Tobago, only 12 people turned up for that consultation, and they begged for it. Sometime afterwards, they begged the leaders of the project to please have it back here again. And it's only then, when they recognized that we brought in people from the sub-regional areas to come in, that they decide to come. We got to change our thinking. And that is a really hard thing to do. Changing the thinking and then changing the structure. And when we can do that, then we will start to talk business. The ministries, we can't have all these ministries, and we can't have all of these, what you call them, constituent, regional corporations. There are 591 communities. Figure out how we going, and the report says it. The report says it, and how we going to compete among the communities so that we will get that push for development faster and faster.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I just want to make one more point. There's a last report that was done in 2012. Minister Dolly has that report, and it talks about developing the district of St. Anne's East, Santa Cruz, and La Canoa in particular, looking at creating a vibrant economy, education, everything that you can think. It's a complete report, and she has it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister, one of the fundamental questions,
no,
how
I mean,
far...
what she has said makes sense. What I said in my presentation is that there are piles and piles of report. We are going through all the report. We are distilling it. We still having this final rounds of consultation, but all the institutional knowledge will be used in coming up with our proposal. I want to give you the assurance that the difference this time and from any other time is that we know, I think we have under our new leader, we have the political will to take this step, and whether we get it 100% right the first time, we are going to do it.
Okay, Mr. Boris.
Pleasant good day. As said, my name is Harvey Boris, former councillor. Let me start by saying, of course, I love my country.
Yeah.
Mr. Minister, sometimes our government seek to mamagai the population. In this case, I want to clearly state, it is normally done a year or 2 years before the elections. In this case, I am clear that this government aimed to do the transformation of local government because it started at the very beginning of the term. So I want to congratulate the government and you in particular, Minister, because for sure the government means to do this transformation. I'm convinced of that. On that hand, Minister, let me just say this. We need to look at local government, and then keeping somewhat with what my colleague Ian said a while ago, where local government begin to really focus on the local entrepreneur, the local person who want to develop him or her. They want to create that development in their community and also in their business skills, as the case may be. There must be something put in place specifically to where that is concerned, where you can have that development. There must be pilot projects put in place to help businesses, just like the CPAP, as you said, Minister, where in the community, San Juan Laventil is trying to ensure that I or this person who is a businessman, who is a contractor, you are able to grow, to be able to move from the $50,000 contract to the $5 million contract to a $100 million contract. That's the growth and commitment that we must be committed to in our various communities. We need to understand that the commitment must be there. In addition to that, I've heard a person say that the central government must have certain authority over local government, but that again is putting back local government in short pants. For local government to understand that they are a big man or woman, which they ought to be because you are local government. When people elect you, they elect a representative, not a person of the central government, but a representative of their local area. That's the local government of the area. And as such, there could be agencies in place, but not necessarily controlled by central government to control local government because you end up in the same situation. So I'm suggesting that we put things in place to ensure that we do what we can do in terms of elevating persons. I'll conclude by making this final point, because this is an experience. When we were looking at removing properties or construction within, that was on road reserve, Mr. Minister, we were only able to remove the poor man who was on the road reserve. Up to this day, those who are on the road reserve, who have the big lawyers and the big money, up to this day, we have not been able to touch one. But we were able to go and mash down and remove all the small persons who were on the road reserve because they had no fight back where we are concerned, picking the low-hanging fruit. And this is where we must look for that level of equity in respect of when we move with the law, we move against all, whether you're big or small, we move against all. Today I stand here representing, I'm a director of the San Juan Business Association and the director in charge of local government and community development. And I'm asking that we consider whatever we do, whatever we put in place, that we be fair across the board. We don't do like the last administration when they offered car incentive for councillors to purchase vehicles. And by the time councillors, like from our region, myself in particular, went and made the arrangement to purchase vehicle, they removed the incentive whereby only their councillors were able to use the benefit. These things are unfair, and I want to really end by complimenting the government, because I think you're on the right track in this particular case. I want to give you my full support, and I'm hoping that when you finish the consultation, we can see the true rollout of local government, similar to that of Tobago, where people, where my chairman, Mr. Roberts, or whoever is our new chairman, would have that authority to really make changes and transformation within San Juan Laventille where they can request of local government tax incentive to put certain business in certain parts of Laventille to create growth, to create, and looking at really the economy and looking at tourism, but looking at it as though this is your country to which you are in charge. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Just remind, now we're running out of time,
No,
so
no,
those
but
are
Mr.
in the
Boris,
line, please remember to be
comments
very
doesn't-
brief in your introduction.
It's well received, and we thank you very much for it, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Phil Clouden.
Can you go closer to the
Come,
microphone, please?
Surely. This is my first attendance to such a gathering.
Go closer.
Where's the technician? I can't get closer like this.
Right,
Yeah?
yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
Again, my name is Phil Clouden, and it's a pleasure to be at this function here today. It's the first time I've been exposed to any sort of political forum other than last September I voted for a winner. Now I hear that you guys are looking at revolutionizing, reforming, transforming local government from since 1962. And I think the whole idea of grassroots involvement, community involvement is the way to go. However, you got to execute all these brilliant ideas and plans. People are still complaining about issues that they have been frustrated with for years. But this forum is particularly to make a change, transform. And I'm hoping that you employ all the resources, whether they be expatriates, people that are sitting at home with a master's but don't want to do a clerical job. And as I reflect upon Dr. Rowley's reach out to the population for volunteerism, and I look at your organizational chart for committees to drive the initiative so that we can get the desired results, I stand here ready to volunteer. However, where do I go? Who do I see to get this vision of Dr. Rowley about volunteering? Not that I need a paycheck, I need to make a change. And if you guys are very serious about the idea of transforming responsibility and management to the local level so that we can get quicker results, the bureaucracy will stifle us. So bringing it from the grassroots up is a brilliant idea. Look towards volunteerism, look for community involvement, but find a vehicle for us to go through.
Thank you very much. Any quick responses before we move on? Sir.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Jesse Daniel, and I represent the Mover Central Community Council, of which I'm the president. I want to speak on two brief issues. One has to do with the issue of the municipal police, that municipal police should be given broader responsibilities to build a better, healthier relationship with communities. I am raising this in the context of I'm asking myself, what is the social contract that exists between the police at present? Now, as I said, I'm from the Mover area. And let me just say, Mover is a very, for me, Mover Central in particular is a very homogeneous community where, for example, I am the third, my children are fourth generation. And for example, my MP for the community, Mr. Leons, I can say I know him, I know his parents. So I have a sense of who my community is. But what I have a concern is with, and I'll give you a little example. Recently, I'm driving my car in my area. A policeman comes over with a big gun, stop. I'm like, now who the hell is this? I don't know him. He, to me, is a stranger in my community. In fact, I will go so far as to say he's an unwelcome but necessary stranger in my community. Why I say unwelcome is because when we bring police into my community, I don't know who they are. They don't know who I am. There is no opportunity for us to have that social interaction where, for example, when a new inspector is brought into the Mover district, the community can begin to know, okay, these are the officers, and the officers can know who are certain representatives in the community so that when we have problems, we can come together to build the relationship. But when you bring people from Central, for example, or from whatever area, and you bring them into my area, I see him walking the streets, I don't know him, he don't know me, he don't know the youths in my community. Then the question becomes, what is his role? Who is he serving and who is he protecting? Because clearly when he comes and he stops me and he stops my other community without knowing, I don't get the feeling that if he's there to protect me.
I get the feeling as if my community becomes under a bit of a siege, because I know when these officers go in certain other communities, in certain other areas, they go to protect and serve. They don't go on lockdown and start to just search and stop every vehicle. That don't happen in certain communities. And I'm saying that my community should be given the same respect. So I'm hoping that with this new reform that we are talking about, that the community will have an opportunity to know who is being selected as officers to work in their community, and even when new persons are being brought in, that we have an opportunity to welcome these new officers into our community so that they now feel welcome rather than being unwelcome guests into my home. That's one point, and I just want to raise one small and I'll be finished. I have had the opportunity to see local government at work in certain other jurisdictions abroad. And one of the things that I would like to see added into this new reform is that when you have people moving from one district to another, I have been in areas where, for example, if someone has to move from Tonapuna, for example, to come and live in the Mova area, there must be a registration process where they have to register with the local council or whoever in that area. So that way we can monitor who is coming and going from our communities. So that, for example, if person X wants to get a passport or whatever, and he says, well, look, I am living in such and such area, that person should be able to go to the council in the area and get a letter saying, yes, that we are aware that Mr. So-and-so does live there and has been living there, so forth. Before that person should be given any kind of documentation to say that they are living in that area. The councils should have some say so that we can monitor, and that way we can know who is coming and how do we protect our community. So I'm asking that some kind of addition to your reform be given powers to the community so that they can know what is going on in the area. Thank you.
Thanks for those points.
Deal with the police. You hit the nail on the head. The vision with the municipal police and being able to have a strength of 100 is exactly what you've described, and is going back to the days where everybody in the community knew the sergeant at the police station, knew the constables, etc. That is the vision. The only difficulty I see with that from a rollout and a logistics point of view, and I face it when I'm walking in my constituency and my community, is I often have those in the protective services tell me, for example, if I'm in an area, and I don't like using the term a hotspot, when you're in that area, they say they don't want the nefarious persons to know that they're in the army, the Coast Guard, the police, etc., because they feel threatened. But that's not the role of the municipal police. What we're looking to do by building back up that strength is exactly what you've described. They become more oriented with the community. The training we envisage for them is a different type of training in addition to the normal police training, is so that they can help from a social point of view as well. Going back to how our Prime Minister tells us it should be and how it was in his days. So that is our intention. So again, the recruitment process should be persons from the communities, from the corporation, into the municipal corporation police.
Minister, anything on that point? No. Thank you very much. Now, after this gentleman in the black on this side and Ms. Azavero at the back there, that's going to be it for contributions from the floor. We'll have to close off after that. Sir.
Good evening, sir.
This gentleman at the microphone here.
Good evening.
Yes.
Good evening, ministers and Burgesses.
Yes, go right ahead.
I stand here to address the question of the 100 municipal police. Reason, I was a police officer for 35 years. I am now the manager of Wilmar Council and Correction Service, and I stand here ready to assist in the whole question of the reform with respect to the 100 municipal police. I hope too that there will be a component of serious community policing within that 100 municipal police. Reason, because 15 of my 35 years service I spent as a community police officer, and it worked. I think this would have been better if the powers that be right now in terms of the police service would have looked at community policing more seriously and helped develop it. Minister Hines and Mr. Roberts, they can attest to the type of community policing work I did with the police service. So I stand here ready to assist you.
Thank you
My
very
number
much.
is 375-5980. Wilma is wilmaconklin@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Let's go to the next person in line.
Thank you very much, sir, for offering your services, and it will be well received. And we are committed to community policing through the municipal police.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Wayne Roberts from Santa Cruz, Sambuco. And, well, much I've said there tonight. And I only have two quick points I would like to make here. One, the question of funding and the local government and the taxation. I would like Mr. Franklin Khan to just expound a little bit on the whole question of funding, because I fear that when the taxes have been taken up by the local government, all right, where these taxes go back to central government and then redirected. So probably I could get a clarification there. And the next point is the whole question of now we're talking about Santa Cruz being an area, the gateway to Maracas. And my whole question and point is on the question of unemployment. As you know, Mr. Young, I think you recognize me. Yeah.
I do.
The whole question of unemployment. And I believe that the area of Santa Cruz, well, the whole sentence is, there are a lot of possibilities, opportunities for employment, all right? And the government, through local government, you know, they could facilitate, you know, some of the infrastructure in the sentence where we have all this local tourism taking place here, and a lot of people still unemployed, you know. Everybody looking towards the state, but if the state could do the putting this infrastructure in place, I think we could go a long way. And least but not last, I have spoken to Mr. Roberts on the question of now in Sambuco, the bridge, all right? Santa Cruz, Upper Santa Cruz, Sambuco there. That area is boosted to the seams with oversubscribed. The population is very large there. And there's a small bridge to come into Sambuco, all right? And you know what, Mr. Khan? Yeah. And I think that with local government and the regional co-op, that something should be done in that area, because it's a disaster waiting, you know, to happen there with the traffic and so on. And on the Saddle Road, the two that's going to Maracas, that project which was taking place there with the
landslip.
Every time I pass on that road across there, I get goosebumps. I'm very scared. Okay, and I think that you know, something should be done to remedy that situation. But I know that something will be done. Now I endorsed this reform here 150%. I think it is 40 years too late, but they say better late than never. All right, so I fully support this here, and I hope in this year we could get some changes, meaningful changes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I mean, there isn't much to respond to that.
Keep it very quickly, please.
Good evening, everyone, again. I believe that the HDC may be at cross purposes with the delivery, not necessarily the delivery, but the whole arrangement of allocating residents and building communities vis-a-vis the agriculture sector. They need to do something else in terms of moving communities. Sometimes the whole community would move from one place like Upper Belmont Valley Road straight up to La Hoqueta, that kind of thing. I mentioned the PH drivers because we need to regulate the feeding of the larger carriers.
You made that point earlier.
Yeah.
And also the matter of allocating each house an identity, each building, you will have, it will have an impact on the crime fighting effort.
Okay, sir.
That was one of the main purposes for mentioning.
You'll be glad to know we have looked at that, and we are looking at that as part of the national security apparatus.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, Councillor Delamo. I think this endeavor is a glorious opportunity for you to rationalize employment at local government level. And placing people closer to their homes. I estimate that you would have about a 20% reduction in commuters on the road if people close to home. that would then impact on our gas subsidy because we're using less gas. But the social impact would be parents would be closer to their homes. And the benefit to be derived from that is, one, being closer to home. It will also impact on their real wage because monies that had to be expounded towards transportation would now be there. Their home, you know, as it stands now, I used to commute from South. You leave dark and you reach home dark and you're sleeping while you're having your dinner. But it could now impact that the family could now have some time in the evening to really blend. In terms of security, I applaud the supplementing of the police service. But we seem to always forget that fire is also a part of security. And I haven't heard anything about fire, and I'm concerned because my fire station at Mova have one appliance part-time. I don't think there's any at Santa Cruz and so on. So if we're talking in terms of security, apart from the crime, we must have that sort of security. The other problem, we're speaking about squatting, but as far as I'm concerned, is my biggest challenge on plan development. And we have to really reach a point where we say enough is enough and then start doing the right thing from then. Good evening.
Thank you, Councillor.
Agreed.
And finally, from the floor.
Yes, my name is Vicky Acevero. Good evening, ministers. I have 2 points to make. The first is about trash and garbage. I know that you said that local government has always been involved in the business of garbage collection. What I would like to suggest is that we strengthen the legislation for recycling. We really have a major problem with trash here. I have to go so far as to say that the betum was burning, but when the betum burns, it also releases all those neurotoxins, and those neurotoxins, as we learned from Flint, Michigan, really do have an impact on our young people, and they cause developmental delays, and there are many other nefarious effects to improper waste disposal. I think we could do a lot better. The other thing that I would like to suggest is that we think about quality of life index as we go forward in this local government transformation. And maybe by taking each one of the things that we've talked about and giving them a certain rating, 1 to 10, we would be able to say whether Santa Cruz has got a 10 in terms of schooling, in terms of helping old people, in terms of road access, and so on. And maybe that would make it easier for the accountability to occur and for people to see the transparency if we actually rated the things that lead to a better quality of life for our communities.
Thank you very much. I think the good news is, as Minister Khan knows, just this week, from a legislative point of view, we are looking at the whole recycling and bringing legislation to actually encourage recycling and exactly that, the PET bottles. We've been discussing it with those who use the bottles, the manufacturers, and that legislation is coming soon.
And let me go a little further on waste management. In my presentation, I said when I went to the Ministry of Local Government, I got a pile high so on local government reform. But just below that level was a pile high like this on solid waste management. Still, we continue to dispose of our garbage the same way as we disposed of it since the 1950s. Right now, there are only 4 landfill sites in Trinidad and Tobago: Beetham, Claxton Bay, Guapo, and one other, I forget where, Heights of Guanapo. Yeah. No, but the point I'm making is that we have not changed in any way how we just take all the garbage. The only difference between garbage collection in the 50s and now, in the 50s there be an open truck, they used to take shovel and throw it in the beatum. Now they have compactors. So what the compactors do is really rob the people in the beatum from getting things, you know. Because everything compressed and you destroy all the reusable items from the garbage. Ladies and gentlemen, you go to the developed world and you see modern garbage disposal systems. And you wonder, why haven't Trinidad gone on board? You know, I wonder, I say this country suffers from inertia. We just sit by, time passes, and nothing happens. After concurrent with local government reform, I have taken up the challenge personally on waste management. Because there are so many reports, and when you look at the landfill sites, landfill is not a very environmental friendly way to dispose of garbage. In particular, the heights of Guanapo landfill. The heights of Guanapo sits on some of the biggest groundwater aquifers in Trinidad and Tobago. And it sits on some of the best surface streams in Trinidad and Tobago. The Beetham landfill is in clays, so there's no seepage underneath there because that's a swamp. Okay? In Claxton Bay is slightly different, but in particular, the foothills of the northern ranges should never have a landfill site. So we have to rationalize that. We have to come up with modern garbage management disposal. Recycling is only one aspect of it. There are now systems to convert garbage into fertilizer, into fuel, into electricity, and we just have to get on board. And when you look at the kind of money this country has spent in the last decade or 5 years in particular, let me just close on this point. The last budget of the Patrick Manning administration was $45.5 billion. Over the last 5 years, the average was about $60 to $63 billion. And you ask yourself, where all this money went? Nothing has happened fundamentally to change the society. Nothing has happened fundamentally to change the infrastructure of Trinidad and Tobago. Nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. So now we find ourselves in a constrained environment fiscally. So we have to cut to fit. But ladies and gentlemen, the little that we now have will be put to the good use of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think on that note, we can close off this evening's discussions. I want to thank everyone who has taken the time to be here. We have MPs, we have ministers of government, we have local government representatives, and we have citizens. Thank you very much, and reach home safely, please.